Morena, and thank you for coming this morning. This is a particularly important day for us. And on my left is Judith Stanway, who was the chair of the Flood Review Panel, and Doug Leeder, the chair of Regional Council. And we wanted to be together to tell the back story to this together to the Daily Post. Yesterday we received this report, and it was given to elected members yesterday of council, and both councils actually, and this report looked into the flooding at Nongataha, the event that happened in April of this year. What we wanted to do with the report was try to understand what happened and then help us to develop a plan of action really to mitigate risk into the future. The plan has focused largely on Nongataha, but the lessons from this will apply across the catchment. That's really clear because the flood was further afield than Nongataha alone, but there's some very valuable information in here to develop the plan. Yesterday we heard from the panel members and then members of both councils on the work that was already underway. So they haven't sat idle since the flood, and they're working collaboratively on some actions that are recommendations here. So I'm pleased to say that work began straight away. Firstly, it was about reducing the flood risk straight away for the Nongataha community. But once we start to pick the report up and look at it quite comprehensively, I have to say, Judith, it's a very comprehensive report, and some of us only ourselves saw it yesterday and read it last night, so it's very new to us all. But when we start to look at developing an action plan, we will involve the whole community. I want that on the record. They're very keen to be involved in some way. But Judith, thank you for the comprehensive review, and I'd like you to say something soon. We'd also like to acknowledge the flood affected residents. This has had a profound effect in our community, and it was good that some of them shared their views in the meetings that the panel held, that we stayed away from, so that the panel got a fix on their view. And some, I know, remained silent. They just wanted the review panel to do their work. They will be interested in the report, and then I'm sure they'll be asking questions about how they can get involved in the comprehensive plan that will be developed. The last thing that I want to say is that we're experiencing the impact of climate change more obviously than we ever have before, and that we can still expect some extreme weather events. So it's so variable, and we're getting used to living with that variability. And we can't give assurances about the future risk, not at this stage, till the plan has been comprehensively developed. But Doug and I are committed that the two councils will work together and collaborate, and will work with the residents to ensure that we do build a resilient community and as a resilient place facing the future pressures. So Judith, you may want to say something about the review process.
Yes. So the review process, we were commissioned by the Regional Council and Lakes Council, and they appointed the board, where there was 4 of us, and you have their names. There was 2 engineers and Tierra Flavel and myself. A very effective board. We were able to cover the range of issues that appeared and were related to the flood. I'm pleased to hear the Mayor talk about comprehensive. We had 24 recommendations at the end of this report. The important thing about them is that they are all looked at together, because they are not one-off type things that you can pick this one and tick that one off and move on to the next. They are something that all has to be considered together. So the comprehensive side of it is important, and the moving forward. So as a panel, our emphasis was on, and what we're urging the councils to do is to say, this is what it is now. This is the position we're in now. Excuse me. Where do we go from here? Don't go looking back and say whose fault was it, where did the faults lie. It's what we can do now to make this never happen again is the key. And also the other thing I'd like to just acknowledge is the input of the community, as the Mayor commented on, is they were invaluable in their insights and their resilience and their positivity in their approach to to our meetings with them and so on. So yes.
Thank you, Mayor Chadwick. Yes, could I also acknowledge the efforts and the comprehensive report that the panel put together. I think it's very good. It focuses on several areas. Firstly, what were the circumstances leading to this event? Secondly, the dislocation and the disruption to people's lives and properties, and how can we mitigate that going forward? And thirdly, in terms of what lessons can we learn from this and take from this in terms of future urban development, not only in Rotorua but other areas that are subject to populations being located in essentially high-risk areas. So I think it's, as the Mayor said, we have between the two organisations, that's Rotorua Lakes Council and ourselves, taken the initiative to work together on some of these recommendations well before this report came out, because it was the sensible thing to do. So in terms of what we're endeavouring to do, we're trying to give the community of Nongataha, the affected community in Western Road, a high level of comfort that we are going to address some of these issues. What the solutions will not be delivered tomorrow, but hopefully they'll be delivered in a time frame that gives these residents a high level of comfort that we are going to do something. What that will have to be discussed between both ourselves, Rotorua Lakes Council, and the community, because it will involve them. And I think, Stevie, we're looking in mid-19 before we can actually go to the community with a suite of proposals to say, well, this is what we're going to have to do here. But as you know, in Rotorua here, there's other areas proposed for urban development, and we need to take the lessons learned from this and apply them to those proposed subdivisions or urban development areas, and say, let's not repeat this.
So you may have questions. Could I just say too, Kelly, I'm pleased to come to this point at this time of the year. This is only the closure but the beginning of the next phase, but it's good to have this 8 months after a catastrophic event and the impact on our community. I wouldn't have liked this going on into next year without knowing the way forward.
Cool. Yeah, I do have a few questions. I have read the whole 110 pages of the
well
report.
done. Yes.
So I would first of all, I just want to say, the report was commissioned by the council and the regional council. That's not something you had to do, right? Is that something you wanted to do? Am I right in saying?
Yes, it was following a phone call that I had with Doug that this felt the right thing to do, because we were out and about in the community, and clearly there was some confusion from the community, even at that stage. We were getting on with mitigating the impact of the flood, but you could see that going forward, the sooner that we commissioned an independent review that the community would have confidence in, the better.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think I've got to just add to that, because you're right, we didn't have to do it, but given the level of disruptions to people's properties and lives, it was important that they were able to reference an independent review of the circumstances leading to this. And I think, whilst I don't want to bring it in, but Kyle Christensen, who worked with Sir Michael Cullen on the Educate review, he was party to this as well, in terms of the expert panel. So he came with a lot of knowledge in terms of the Bay of Plenty and the engineering around water. So I think he was a complement good compliment to the panel, having the historical benefit of reviewing the Edgecombe one under Sir Michael Cullen.
I think it's, to your credit that you did do that. You possibly could have just turned a blind eye and carried on saying it was a 1 in 100 year flooding event. I'm just going to go through a few points in the report. I guess the first one is that the report is critical, I guess, that of the fact that there wasn't an emergency management plan in place at the time. And is that something that's common practice or that should have been in place? Because
it was definitely an evident emergency response. I think what you're referring to is that you need to develop a plan. There is a plan for the district actually, but and we followed what we had in front of us. I think the report is probably highlighting the need for different technical responses, and that's what we'll look at in our comprehensive response and plan. What other resources are available to us? But there was definitely a plan. We were busy straight away, and we all knew what we were doing.
I think that the actual report said that it wasn't your role to assess the response.
No,
it was
that's
more. It was more to say what perhaps should have been in place, and that was what the report has recommended, that you urgently put in an emergency management plan. And will that be done?
Well, of course it will be done, and at our council, and I can't speak for regional council, we look at this as part of our risk project, and this is part of our risk planning, and this is what we were saying about lessons learned of things that are recommended in here that we will put into a risk management plan.
And can I just comment that I don't think that before April people recognised that the vulnerability of that area, and that's because of some of the things we came up with in the report later on.
Perhaps if I could perhaps turn to those questions now. Is that the report obviously highlighted some areas of concern around the issuing of consents for the Pioneer subdivision, and has raised some points about that. Would this council today have given consent to that subdivision, knowing now?
I think that's too soon to answer, Kelly. What we're doing now, literally, like you, is reading this, considering the recommendations, and being able to put our hands across our heart to say, given the best information that we've got, this is how we'd manage in the future. I think where you're going is saying with resource consents in sensitive areas, that is an issue that needs to be worked through when a new application comes forward, and of course we'll use the lessons learned.
And can I just make a comment too, in that we did make it emphasised in the report that that was 12 years ago that the resource consents were done, and best practice and policies and processes used by the councils and so on have progressed since then. So it would be a different scenario now than it was then.
Yes, for sure.
Can I just clarify, in the report where you talk about the emergency management plan, you're not talking about a district emergency, civil defence emergency plan, you're talking about specifically for Ngāi
We are, yes, because we're talking about things like warning signs and those types of things, yes.
So there's a generic responsibility overseen by the regional council in terms of emergency management preparedness, but in this circumstances I think we have to acknowledge that the event was so short in terms of the event taking place and the flooding taking place. It wasn't as if there was a forecast that said, right, in 3 days' time you're going to get a whole lot of water coming down here. This was an event that I think, Judith, you must have the figures, it was so many mils in 3 hours,
yes,
and the time for the community to
yes.
react. So the reports, I think, is essentially saying, given we know that this community currently has a high level exposure, in terms of future events, let's prepare an emergency management plan that can be activated within a number of hours, not days, so the community can do things.
And the wider lessons, Kelly, also, rere whakatu reparo, tarawera, same. And that's what we need to look at.
And it's climate change too, isn't it?
Yeah, and an example is that from talking to the community, the people well upstream in the farming area, in Paradise Valley and so on, the water hit them about 2 hours before it hit the Pioneer property. So I mean, so we can look at a warning system that as soon as it hits up there.
Yeah. Okay. Just before we move off the Pioneer subdivision area, there's a line in the report that suggests that the council could look at funding future-proofing homes in that area, given what went on with knowing now that there were errors in the consenting process. Is that something that the council will look at doing?
Well, we'll have to look at every recommendation.
That was just one of the suggestions.
Just one, yes, yeah. That's possibly one that will matter, I guess, to the residents of the village as well. So that's just going to be part of
it. Every recommendation will be looked at.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing that I picked out was the I guess, for want of a better word, I think, you know, the report was I guess critical of perhaps, these are my words, not the reports, but the toing and froing over the known flood risk areas, particularly the Ngongataha stream, that upper level. And, you know, it was basically saying that it's a core services of both those councils, but despite one council saying this and one council saying that, and the messages going back and forth, nothing actually changed to that 100-year standard, and it still remained the same. So in light of that, do you think that both councils perhaps dropped the ball in that area?
I don't think so, but I think there was confusion about who does what, and that's one of the recommendations in the report about getting some clarity about roles and responsibilities. What I like, where the report is going, is that the recommendation to collaborate, I like that word, and to do it on a catchment-wide approach. So look at the whole of the caldera, which is technically what we are, and say, have we got the right modelling, have we got the right mitigation, and are we aware of the risks? And to do that with the expertise of Regional Council and Lakes Council. The community, Kelly, was very clear. They started ringing the call centre, right? They didn't ring Regional Council to ask what was going.
No, yeah.
It was their community, and they looked for leadership, for responses there. And I think as the team got together very quickly, they were meeting the day after the flood. We were teasing out the roles and responsibilities of both authorities, and I think that's something we can make much more clear in our plan that we'll develop with the community.
And I think, Kelly, that you'll recall that it was only 12 months previous to this event that we had a similar event up at Paradise Valley by the Lion Park, and the remediation from that event is still being finished, and at that time the Regional Council in conjunction with RLC said to the community up there, and that was what I referred to as the midstream community as opposed to lower urban, which was affected this time, and they raised issue about what remediation or what support going forward was going to be there, and we said, look, if you want as a community a more comprehensive approach to management of the Ngongataha stream, then come back and see us. Now, to date, I'm not aware that that community has done that, but in terms of this event, which is more people, more dwellings and more houses, that's the opportunity that we engage with the community going forward and say, well, what does this community want? It's one of the recommendations of the panel that we agree with that we, a recommendation that we proceed with that. So that's what we're going to do. But ultimately we have to involve the community in whatever the mitigations are going to be for them. And there may be a suite of them.
And Paradise Valley has set up I can't remember the title, it's in the report actually, the Paradise Valley Action, yes, which is designed to look at how they can manage their catchment better and so on. So yeah, so that is in progress. Yeah, so it obviously worked at the time.
But that's that's more of a rural
yes,
area,
it is.
isn't it?
You
know, where
You're
people
right,
just tend to get in and fix it themselves, as opposed to this, which was highly populated relative to the rest.
But you can see with the modelling in the report, it's highly technical about the modelling. the waters gather in the top
Yeah.
and then flow down. So it's a mix of solutions that
Yeah.
will come up in the plan,
Yeah.
structural
Yeah.
planning, mitigation.
Working together.
Yeah, but working together, I think is, and I'm pleased that that's a lesson learned from this.
Yeah.
As I commented yesterday at the presentation, that it needs a fresh approach from the councils.
Yeah. I think that goes back to like the first question that I had, is that you didn't have to do this, commission this independent panel, and it did leave you open to the criticisms of what had gone on in the past, didn't it? And I mean, is there anything you'd like to say around that? I guess, the fact that you've got independent people coming and you're opening your books on what's gone on in the past in terms of consenting and stuff, and being open about that, I guess, that's what the report has done. And is there anything that, you want to say around that?
I think the community's got an intelligence of its own, actually. My sense at this stage is they want to get on and feel safe in the future and get on quite quickly. So as Doug said, next year we'll be going out saying these are the suite of things that we can get on and do, and they've got a view too. They know where the water flows, they know where the overflow channels might go and the size of the pipes, and they'll work with the technical expertise that both councils will bring. If there is a wider view, that's for the community to decide where they're going to go on that.
Yeah. And just two more questions, sorry. And I guess this has come at an important time, like we've touched on earlier with the urban development and the new subdivisions that are popping up, that this report is so critical for that future planning, isn't it? And
Well, absolutely. Flood mitigation is part of any resource consent process.
Yeah.
And that is where we're not at yet with any proposed urban development. We're not at the resource consent phase.
No, yeah.
But boy, there's lessons learned from here.
Absolutely. And just one question, not that it's a sticking point, but the cost of the report, has it ever been revealed or released, and who paid for it?
Well, I'm sure we haven't costed it yet, actually.
Oh, no, I don't know what the cost is,
No,
but it's
it was the right
sheer
thing to
cost.
do.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I that's what I like about this fresh approach. Get on and do the right thing for our communities. And I'm not saying worry about the costs later. We knew there were costs involved to get the right report to give us the baseline information so we can make good decisions going forward. And that is the role of both authorities, in my view.
And if I just comment, Kelly, in terms of the risk going forward, because the report says that a lot of the data in here is based around what they call a 1% or 100-year AEP flood event. Given, and I think the panel made the comment in here, that given the effects of climate change, which is not sea level rise here, I mean it's clearly about rainfall events, the intensity of rainfall events, the panel's view is here that we probably don't have 100 AEP flood event protection. We're probably heading towards 50 year. And that applies across the whole region or the whole country, not just here. But that's a salient point in terms of provision for the future. So if you've got another subdivision you want to pop up, do you do a 100 year under the old standards? The old standard is essentially about a 50 year.
That's right.
That's right.
So the costs in terms of getting up to a new standard of 100 years would be very high.
Yeah.
I think it's put to bed the perception that climate change isn't real. We're all facing that, and we've got to look at the best mitigation and the best strategy. And that's a good thing, because we were arguing this only 18 months ago, and now we know we've got to have a resilience plan.
Awesome.